Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cellular Healing TV. I'm your host, Meredith Dykstra, and this is episode number 204. We have our resident cellular healing specialist, Dr. Dan Pompa, on the line, and today we welcome a very special guest, Tyler LeBaron. And we have a hot topic for you guys today, a supplement, and well, I guess it is kind of a supplement that has been really all the rage lately. We've seen it at a ton of different health conferences. Dr. Pompa and I have been experimenting a little bit with it ourselves. And we are talking about molecular hydrogen. Tyler is an expert, and so he's going to share the science behind how molecular hydrogen works and some of the potential therapeutic benefits that can have to our health as well. So before we dive in, let me tell you a little bit more about Tyler. Tyler W. LeBaron is the founder and executive of the science-based nonprofit Molecular Hydrogen Foundation/Institute. His background is in biochemistry and was a one-year adjunct instructor of physiology. He interned at Nagoya University in the Department of Neurogenetics to research the molecular mechanisms of hydrogen gas on cell signaling pathways. He is the director of the International Hydrogen Standards Association and the International Molecular Hydrogen Association. He speaks at medical conferences in the U.S. for doctors, CMEs, CMUs, and at academic biomedical hydrogen symposia and conferences around the world. He's also a member of the academic committee of Taishan Institute for Hydrogen Biomedical Research, and he collaborates with researchers at home and abroad and helps advance the education, research, and awareness of hydrogen as a therapeutic medical gas. Welcome to Cellular Healing TV, Tyler. We're so excited to talk about molecular hydrogen.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, appreciate the opportunity to discuss our research.
Yeah, well, listen, I look at you as a bit of a savant, actually. I've had several discussions with you on this topic and others. And, yeah, for me, it's like, this is a guy who no doubt is a savant in the areas that I'm interested in, actually, because your research really applies to the cell. In this topic of molecular hydrogen. Meredith's right. We attend all the big conferences. Meredith, we saw it at every conference, right? From Bulletproof to A4M, I mean, all of them. So, I mean, this is quite the rage, right? And, before I jump in fully, I try things. I got my bottle right here. Meredith does too, right? And we kind of dig in and we ask a lot of questions and we talk to people who have been using it and, and we haven't even started officially carrying a product yet because, we're still in the curiosity phase, and that's why we brought you on today. So, I think this topic, I want you to share with our viewers just right off the bat. Okay, we talk about oxygen. We're talking about hydrogen. Okay, so kind of give an idea here for the average person. What are we talking about here? Hydrogen? I mean, it's on the periodic table. Is that the hydrogen?
That's right, and that is what we're talking about. That hydrogen, that's the first element on the periodic table, the number one. It's the father of all the elements, right? Yeah. And this is hydrogen gas specifically. So it's not like a hydrogen ion, which is what pH has to deal with. And so it has nothing to do with like alkaline water or something like this. It's just hydrogen gas. And you can take hydrogen gas just like oxygen gas and you can inhale it. But with oxygen gas, of course, we need that to live. We need oxygen gas because that is essential in the mitochondria, where it's used to drive the electron transport chain to make the proton gradient and make ATP. And that's where oxygen comes in. But hydrogen gas acts as basically we're finding that acts as a therapeutic molecule, has some like anti-inflammatory effects, antioxidant type effects, anti-allergy effects, anti-obesity effects, all of this which we'll discuss. But this is the hydrogen gas. And it's really becoming the molecule of the century, so to speak, because it is considered to be, first off, like in the energy fuel cell, it's 3 times more energy dense than gasoline. And so it is a great molecule of energy. It's what powers the sun and fusion to produce helium. But we're also finding that it also has therapeutic benefits to the body, which is really quite surprising that hydrogen, which would be considered normally biologically or physiologically inert, has this cell modulating type effects. Whereas other gaseous signal modulators, such as nitric oxide or hydrogen sulfide or carbon monoxide, these molecules are very polar, or they're a radical like nitric oxide, but hydrogen gas is just a neutral, simple molecule. It's the smallest molecule in the universe, smaller than oxygen, and yet it has these beneficial therapeutic effects.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk about that. First of all, people right now are imagining us breathing a gas. And I guess, of course, that's one way, but we have pills, right? I mean, I remember back when I first started looking into this, we would literally put pills in water, and then we had to fill the water all the way at the top, crank on the lid so it would expand into the water. Then you have your attack, but it only lasted so long, to drink it within a certain period of time, right? And it kind of tasted chalky. It's gotten a little bit better than that, right? So, I mean, talk about how we're getting this water, because this could be unstable. I mean, so how are we stabilizing it? How are we getting it into the body?
Well, there's many methods to consume hydrogen gas, and so we can talk about some of these different methods in the general terms. With our organization, as we're a science-based nonprofit, we do not sell products, we don't represent or recommend or endorse any products, but there are several methods and several ways to administer the molecular hydrogen. One of them is, of course, straight up inhalation of hydrogen gas, which is very effective. In fact, the Japanese government recently approved inhalation of hydrogen gas for a post-cardiac arrest syndrome, because they're finding that the hydrogen gas is just as effective as hypothermia. But when people start the heart, for example, for a surgery, and when you start the heart back up, you get a lot of damage, reperfusion, ischemia, reperfusion damage. And when you use hydrogen gas, that can actually prevent some of that damage. And so they're doing a 360, multi-clinical hospital study to really see the effects of hydrogen gas. But you can also take the gas and you can dissolve it in water, whether you just have a tank of hydrogen gas and bubble it or dissolve it into water, and then you can drink that water. And then in your case, you're talking about the various hydrogen-producing tablets on the market. Of course, these tablets, they don't contain hydrogen gas, which would be impossible, but they produce hydrogen gas by reacting with the water, so it's a chemical reaction, and it leaves you, like in this case with magnesium, you end up getting bioavailable magnesium ions, and the hydrogen gas is dissolved in the water. So, there's different products on the market. Of course, some of them, yes, you would need to put it in a sealed bottle, because any hydrogen gas you produce is just going to dissipate right out. And so that's why the manufacturer, they typically would recommend you fill the bottle all the way to headspace and then seal it, and then you have to wait for the reaction to occur for 20-30 minutes or something. And then as soon as you open it, you'd want to drink it. And then now there's other tablets where you just put in a open glass of water, and because of the reaction kinetics, the dissolution kinetics, the way the bubble size are able to produce, you're able to just drop in a glass of water and then consume it shortly thereafter. And then there's other ways. You could even bathe in hydrogen-rich water, or there's even hyperbaric hydrogen chambers that are becoming available.
Yeah. Well, okay. So how does it compare to oxygen, right? Because I think what hit the market first is all of the oxygen producers, right? And of course, hyperbaric chambers. I mean, everyone went crazy over oxygen. So draw a comparison for folks.
Well, of course, oxygen is essential for life, and hydrogen, as far as we know, is not an essential molecule in that case. But it's interesting if we consider, oxygen, which is what keeps us alive. We breathe that. The essential part of keeping us alive is also slowly killing you, so to speak, by producing various free radicals. And that's, of course, when you cut the apple in half and it turns brown, that's because of oxidation. The same slow oxidation process is occurring on our bodies. And as we get older, we tend to often suffer from more of an oxidative stress. And hydrogen is kind of considered more of a reducing type molecule, so it can help balance out that excessive oxidation through its cell modulating properties, and help basically negate the toxicity of the oxygen. So it's not an essential molecule like oxygen is, but it is appearing to be essential, if you will, in terms of helping to balance out and bring things back to homeostasis when it comes to the free radicals or the inflammation or other things.
So it acts more as a redox molecule in that case then?
Yes, indirectly. It's not, in and of itself, it's not redox active because it's so it's really quite inert. But as a cell modulator, now we're going to see, for example, activation of the NRF2 pathway leading to increases in glutathione levels, superoxide dismutase, catalase, induction of hemooxygenase. This is how molecular hydrogen, one of the ways molecular hydrogen works, and we see this through using like miRNA interference studies or pharmacologically blocking the NRF2 pathway. We see that hydrogen can activate this NRF2 pathway and improve the redox status of the cell.
Okay. Yeah, which that's a big deal, because that would have a big play on inflammation. Matter of fact, I have what I teach on my 5 R's I teach doctors. This is what we need to do to fix a cell. And hydrogen, as I look at it, plays into many of them. The inflammation of the membranes is a big deal. The just restoring cellular energy, that's a big deal. Methylation pathways, glutathione pathways, I mean, all of that. Hydrogen is some directly or indirectly playing a role in all of that. Am I right?
It's possible. We really need to do a lot more research, and we need to be clear when it comes to where we're at with the academic side of research. We need a lot more clinical studies, a lot more studies in general, the in vitro mechanisms of exactly how hydrogen works, to really understand how and to what is the absolute effect of molecular hydrogen. We haven't proven anything in the absolute sense. And in reality, science doesn't prove anything. Science only proves things false. That's how the scientific method works. And if you can't necessarily prove something false, then it simply increases the probability that it's true. So we need a lot more research, but there are around 1,000 scientific publications, and 30, 40 or more human clinical studies, probably another 30 or 40 clinical studies in progress now. And all of this preliminary data has suggested that hydrogen has a therapeutic potential in essentially every organ of the human body, and in over 170 different human and animal disease models. And at first, when you look, this is kind of surprising that this molecule would have so many different effects. But because most drugs, for example, it's a one organ, a one target, one cell receptor, one effect. Whereas molecular hydrogen, so many diseases, so many organs, so many different effects. And the reason why is, as you mentioned, because of the antioxidation effect and this anti-inflammatory effect, which is really the underlying cause of so many different diseases. So when hydrogen is able to help attenuate the inflammation or the excessive oxidation, that's why we're able to see it benefiting so many different diseases.
Now, we know that if you reduce oxidation too much, you end up in trouble, right? You can actually interfere with the body's immune system in that oxidative process that's vital to energy and health. How does it balance that?
Yeah, that's a critical point that I think is often overlooked. All the idea of the free radicals are just killing us, the free radical theory of aging, in a lot of ways is debunked, just because the free radicals are essential, critical molecules in mediating the benefits of whether it be exercise or just longevity in general. That's why exercise, when we exercise more, we breathe more oxygen, and by so doing, we produce more free radicals. And these free radicals are what activate various transcription factors that lead into increased muscle mass or increased strength, endurance. And it's a hormetic response, a hormesis, right? And so we certainly have to have that balance. And really, like you said, we can have too much antioxidants, and we can get a reductive stress. In fact, there's even genetic conditions where you have a constitutively upregulated NRF2 pathway, for example, and that can lead to various cardiac hypertrophies or just a redox balance. And that's the real issue with aging and diseases, is it's a redox dysregulation. And in fact, you can have a redox dysregulation in the same cell. So, for example, you can have too much free radicals, too much oxidation in the cytosol of the cell, leading to depletions in glutathione and oxidation of other biomolecules that are very important, but yet not enough oxidizing power in the endoplasmic reticulum of the cell, which is responsible for folding proteins. And of course, if you can't fold proteins correctly, then you're going to have a lot of trouble, because function dictates, or structure dictates function. So it's really about establishing this redox balance. It's this homeostasis that we're after. And that's where I think hydrogen really shines, and that's why I'm so passionate about hydrogen, is because even though we don't have lots of 10-year clinical studies going back from the 1700s or something using molecular hydrogen for therapy, improving its effectiveness and everything, we do see that it is certainly safe. It is very safe, and all these animal and human studies are suggesting that it has therapeutic potential, and it does not cause a dysregulation of our homeostasis, the redox balance. To put this in perspective, if we were to administer molecular hydrogen to a healthy cell or to a healthy animal or a healthy human, and you measure the levels of glutathione or superoxide dismutase or other antioxidant molecules, you would most likely see there's no change, there's no increase, there's no decrease, and that's exactly what you want. Just like if you don't have diabetes and you take hydrogen, you don't want to see lower levels of glucose or higher levels. You want to keep it exactly the same. But the interesting part comes as soon as you were to add an assault to that individual or that animal or that cell, you would see that because you pre-administered molecular hydrogen, whether inhalation or by drinking, you would see that the hydrogen could greatly rescue the downregulation or the decrease in the antioxidant molecules like glutathione, or prevent the upregulation of the pro-inflammatory cytokines like interleukin-6 or tumor necrosis factor alpha, or the activation of NFKB, which is a transcription factor that causes lots of inflammation. We see this time and time again, and honestly, that's partly why it's so difficult to study molecular hydrogen, because we often have to add some sort of an assault or something to the cell or the animal, and then study how it is that hydrogen rescued the toxic pathological effects. And so now there's so many variables to look at to really understand how hydrogen is truly working at the cellular level.
I think that's my greatest interest in it, is that it brings the body into that homeostasis. It's not forcing one way or another. Like you said, it's when we have a chemical assault, a physical assault, that it reacts. And then now, so with that said, can someone be depleted in hydrogen that we're saying, hey, this person would be even greater, have a greater effect from it because they were depleted, or this person doesn't notice much because they have plenty of hydrogen?
It's an excellent question. Hydrogen is very natural to our bodies, because every time we eat a rich fiber food, the fibers, the non-digestible carbohydrates, are metabolized by our intestinal flora to produce hydrogen gas. So we always see base levels of hydrogen gas in the blood and in the breath all the time. And by simply administering slightly more hydrogen gas by drinking hydrogen-rich water or inhalation or other methods, we're seeing this therapeutic effect. So the question then is, well, if you take somebody who doesn't have a good diet, maybe they don't eat very much fiber, which nowadays a lot of people don't, especially when you consider how much fiber our ancestors used to eat. Perhaps they did get more hydrogen gas in their bodies, right? And different populations. Perhaps there could be some truth to the idea that because this person does not get very much hydrogen gas in their body, whether because they don't have the right microflora, they have a dysregulation going on, or just not a good microbiome, or they don't eat a very good diet, maybe they could be more sensitive to the benefits of administration of molecular hydrogen versus somebody else. We really need more clinical studies to evaluate that hypothesis, but I suppose that it's credible.
I'm still, before I make a claim on this, and I don't think there's a claim in science yet, but trying it clinically, people that are very chemically sensitive or sensitive to EMFs, electromagnetic frequency, is there some talk about it reducing some of the effects of the electromagnetic frequency? I definitely see an effect on people who have more chemical sensitivity. It seems to help. But again, I don't want to make the claim yet. I just kind of see that clinically on that.
It's a valid question. I know that one of the researchers from the Max Planck Institute in Germany, which again is a very prestigious organization, it's the Max Planck Institute. Well, they have found, of course, some people seem to be more sensitive to EMF or these different radiation type frequencies. I am not an expert in that area, so it's a little, I can't really comment on that, but they have found that the molecular hydrogen could help mitigate some of the inflammation and other things that are occurring. I know Dr. Joe Marcola is is a very big fan of molecular hydrogen because he has found that it really can help decrease the EMF damages and things. I'm a little skeptical myself in all the issues with EMF because I haven't personally studied that area, so I have to be careful what I say because I'm not an expert in that. But I suppose if it's true that EMF can cause some of these issues that people talk about, such as the increased hydroxyl radical production or the inflammation or this redox dysregulation, then those are the areas that molecular hydrogen can work on. And I have heard anecdotally from whether it be patients or from clinicians who are working with patients who seem to be more sensitive, that the molecular hydrogen has been very effective for them. But again, as far as a scientific report, I don't have any knowledge of that.
Yeah, I didn't know that there was, but there is the reports, and that's why I'm trying it in those areas myself, right? So I remain skeptical as well until until we have some proof here on the science end to get me to say, okay, let's try it on this end, and then we see it clinically.
Right. Well, you have to have the proof on EMF. Is it really damaging? Which, of course, many people say. I'm just saying for myself.
Yeah.
And then how does that work? And then how does the effects of hydrogen work? But
and I'm going to get off on an EMF thing, but I remain in that area of right? Because here's the thing: we know that EMF can be damaging. We have science to show that. But what is our how close does that matter, right? We know that distance is a factor, and then also what is the body doing with it, right? So in vitro we can apply EMF to cells and we can see damage, but the body also has protective mechanisms, right? So we still don't know exactly how our bodies are dealing with the EMF and how it's adapting for that matter.
Maybe a little bit's good for you because it's kind of formidable.
Right. I mean, to some degree, we know adaptation's occurring, and I promise you this: the younger generation is adapting much faster. Where they're still. But anyways, that's another topic. I get into those conversations with Joe frequently. But anyways, so I have one last question. I know Meredith has a few questions, but okay. So where have we seen it? At least from some scientific data, the greatest benefits of hydrogen. I mean, you did mention weight loss. You did mention energy. You did mention a few things. So what are we seeing? I mean, and you could even step into some of the things that people clinically are seeing as well.
Well, there's certainly a lot of anecdotal reports about pain relief and just mental clarity and the energy, which but how do you evaluate some of these scientifically? So I'll just stick with some of the human studies. The clinical studies have been done. Some of the smaller ones, for example, there was one in Parkinson's disease. It was small, only 100 patients, and not very long. It was just 1 year. But it was a double-blinded, placebo-controlled, randomized study, and they found that the administration of molecular hydrogen or drinking hydrogen-rich water was effective in helping the Parkinson's disease rating score. And there's another study with rheumatoid arthritis, and that was very powerful. It was a very small study, but it was very powerful because they even found that some of the patients with early-stage rheumatoid arthritis had a remission of the disease symptoms. And that corroborates strongly with a lot of the anecdotal testimonials that I have heard people say of how effective the hydrogen has been for their arthritis.
Right.
And so there's now a larger study going on, about 178 patients or so with the rheumatoid arthritis, and a double-blinded randomized clinical trial to see how effective that really is. There's some other studies, of course, in metabolic syndrome. So we're talking about hypertension, hypercholesterolemia, just the obesity, and hydrogen is able to improve a lot of those symptoms. There's, of course, a lot of studies in the animal models. For example, we just published an article recently on hydrogen helping to prevent the development of autism by a chemical exposure to, and of course, the chemical-induced autism and the ingestion of hydrogen-rich water was effective at decreasing those effects. Also, we published another one in Scientific Reports on hydrogen helping to mitigate or attenuate the anxiety and depressive-like behaviors induced by acute and chronic stress. And I think a lot of people suffer from stress. And this is a great animal model that we used, and it was showed that hydrogen was effective at helping prevent those toxic effects. And Also working on another study right now on the non-alcoholic fatty acid liver disease, which a lot of people suffer from because of the diets they choose and the high-fat diets and lack of exercise. And it's very clear hydrogen has some great effect on that as well.
All the consumption of fructose. Kids today have fatty liver. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's very interesting, that the fructose area of how it's metabolized glycolytically primarily is similar to ethanol. But absolutely, that's where hydrogen is a great area, and like I said, it appears to be safe from all the animal and cell and clinical studies that have been done. I mean, they've used hydrogen gas since the 1940s actually to prevent decompression sickness in deep sea diving. At literally millions of times higher concentrations than what we need or use for therapeutic use. So the safety profile is really quite high, and so that's why it's easy for myself to be passionate about this, because we can see that it's safe, and that is the first thing. First, do no harm. And now we're seeing from these animal studies, cell studies, and these preliminary clinical human studies that it really has this therapeutic potential. So that's why I'm very interested in advancing the research on molecular hydrogen.
Yeah, I'm interested as well. Well, Meredith, I know you have some questions.
Yeah, just to piggyback off what you were just saying, I'm curious as to when you started to look at hydrogen therapeutically in the lab, and also when humans have kind of started experimenting with it, how long all of that has been.
Well, the first mention that I have found of hydrogen being potentially therapeutic was by an Italian medical doctor in 1793, and he wrote about how hydrogen inhalation of 3 parts hydrogen and 4 parts the oxygen. Yeah, I forget what he said, but it had this an inflammatory type effect in the lungs. It was just a small blurb in a very old book that I came across. It was very interesting. But then the next study was probably in 1975, and it was done as using a hyperbaric hydrogen chamber, and it was done by Texas A&M and Baylor University, and they published it actually in Science, which is one of the top peer-reviewed journals there are. And they used a transplant of melanoma tumors and found that this hyperbaric hydrogen treatment was effective at regressing the melanoma tumors. But they use like 8 atmospheres of pressure, so it's really not clinically feasible, and so not a lot of research came after that. But then there was the article published in 2007 in Nature Medicine, which is one of the top peer-reviewed medical journals, most respected, credible medical journals. And this is actually the article that I came across in 2009, which got my interest because it is a credible journal, and it was very interesting because it showed that inhalation of molecular hydrogen was effective at suppressing brain damage from basically cerebral infarction induced by a middle cerebral arterial occlusion. So they stopped the blood flow, and then that caused a lot of brain damage. But when you inhaled the hydrogen gas in this animal model, it was effective at suppressing brain damage. And that's really, when I came across that article, I was like, wow, this is very fascinating, very interesting. This is something that could be done for health, for anti-aging, for longevity, for who knows, because of course at that time there was hardly any research articles. And so I started scouring all the PubMed literature on all the scientific journals, and found some good journals in like APS and some other top peer-reviewed articles, and found, yeah, there is some good evidence on molecular hydrogen that really gives me a desire to want to study this more. And then finally I was able to go to Japan and study at Nagoya University for an internship where I could actually research the mechanism. As my background is biochemistry, so that's my primary interest is how does hydrogen gas actually have this therapeutic beneficial effect in the cell? How is it actually working? And there's been talk about how it acts as an antioxidant, like scavenging, directly reacting with hydroxyl radicals, which could happen in an in vitro setting, but probably does not happen in the body because you have a competition kinetics, because the reaction rate of hydrogen gas with hydroxyl radical it's a biomolecular reaction with a rate constant that's second order is 10 to the 7th moles per mole per second. Anyway, it's slow when you consider other radical reactions, and so really that's probably not what's going on, and we're just publishing a couple of papers on that that's probably not what's going on. Some other things are happening instead. But the fact is hydrogen does still exert a prominent antioxidant type effect through its cell modulating activities. So these are the types of things that really gets me interested, because number one, it's in my area of passion of biochemistry. It's in my area of exercise and longevity and health and wellness, and it's something that's safe and something that appears to have such great benefit for all of humankind.
Yeah, you know what I mean. With that said, that's fascinating. That was a great thing that you shed light on how you got into this. I always ask that question, and I really did, and you brought it out. What I know you don't promote a product, but what would we look for if we were looking for a good hydrogen product? What would you say that, yeah, that's something that you need to consider?
Well, it is a good question. You're right, because we're a science-based nonprofit. We don't represent or endorse any types of products, but there are several things you should look at. For example, it should have hydrogen in it. And it sounds kind of facetious to say that, but there are actually quite a few products on the market that may be marketed as a hydrogen product, but there's no hydrogen. They just figure, well, water is H2O, so all water already has hydrogen. But that's totally different. That's not hydrogen water. And that's the thing we should clarify is alkaline water and hydrogen water are totally different. Mm-hmm. There's nothing to do with pH. It's just hydrogen gas is dissolved in the water, so it doesn't change the pH. And the hydrogen gas does not somehow bond to the water molecule and make like H3O or H4O or some other enigmatic magical property or something. It's nothing like that. It's just simply gas dissolved in the water. So when it comes to that, first we have to make sure there's hydrogen gas in the product, and you can test that yourself with a redox titration reagent known as H2Blue, and is simply a reagent where you can take, say, 6 milliliters of the product water, and you can add a drop of the reagent in stepwise, and every time that if there's hydrogen gas present in the water, the hydrogen gas will react with the reagent and turn it clear, and you can do this until you reach the titration endpoint. So anyways, that's called H2Blue. And you can check that out. And there's other reagents throughout Korea and Japan, other places, but anyways, that's just simple. It's here in America. So first you have to make sure there's hydrogen gas in the product, and then secondly, there's some rules of thumbs you can just know. For example, hydrogen gas is the smallest molecule in the universe, so it's going to dissipate and escape very like plastic containers. So if you see hydrogen water in plastic containers or plastic bottles sold at the store, rest assured there's not going to be any actual molecular hydrogen in that water by the time it gets to the consumer, because it'll just dissipate right through the plastic. So if there are ready-to-drink products, and those typically come in aluminum-type containers, and they can be made of pouches. Not all pouches work, so you certainly want to test that. But some of them do. Some of them can work. There's also they come in cans, so there's aluminum cans, and that is a great way to store the hydrogen as well. And of course, you can also test with the reagent on those as well, because sometimes the concentrations are not what is claimed. And so those are mainly for your ready to drink. And then, like you already mentioned, there's the hydrogen producing tablets. Those can work fine. You just follow whatever company you get them from.
Those don't contain hydrogen. It's when you put it in the water.
Absolutely right. They react with water to liberate the H2, if you will, and that makes the hydrogen gas. And so there's several of those tablets that you just want to follow the recommendations of the manufacturer, the company, to make sure you're doing that right. There's probably some scam tablets out there as well, actually. And then of course there's the inhalation devices, and probably with that one I would say, well, make sure you're getting a high enough volume, because you have to actually get enough hydrogen gas in the blood or in the body in order to exert some therapeutic effect, which we're not so sure what that is. But if we look at the cell studies and what we use in human studies, we typically want to make sure we get a concentration that's above 1.3%, and so we could do some calculations and figure that out. But 1.3% of 10 milliliters is a lot different than 1.3% of 10 liters. So we can't just go by the percent. We have to look at how much volume of gas is also being produced. So that's my recommendation. Make sure you have hydrogen. Make sure you get a product that could potentially actually work, and you can always measure it with water, at least with the H2Blue reagent.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
curious quickly, I know we have to finish up here, but just so with the implementation, so we have the tablets and we have the pre-made water, but what about dose and frequency if someone's kind of looking to kind of, know how to implement it like that?
Yeah, it probably depends on the product that you're using. I mean, the fact is we really need more clinical trials. We don't have a lot of clinical trials that are comparing this dose versus this dose and this frequency over this frequency. We need more. And what we do see as I'm also a member of and a director of the IHSA, International Hygiene Standards Association, and we're actually developing some standards based upon the biomedical literature of what is an optimal dose, what is a minimal dose, and it's something we're actively pursuing in the research. But we have to have more clinical trials and studies to really say this is what is needed. But we can say that what we are using in the human studies and what clinicians are finding them on their own, and one of that is a higher concentration of hydrogen does appear to be effective, and it's not less effective than a lower concentration. So kind of the trend is this higher dose or this higher concentration, because that could potentially be exert potentially more benefits. We see that from some studies that a higher dose could be better, but maybe not in all cases. We really need more information, more studies on that.
I guess you can't really overdose it, right?
That's the thing, because hydrogen just escapes. So after you drink hydrogen-rich water, it's gonna be expelled out the lungs in about an hour or so, and it has this cell modulating effects. It has a residual effect, so it could be protective for several hours, several days, even several weeks, according to one clinical trial even. So we have this residual effect with the cell modulating activities. But yeah, you can, I mean, so you have your ready to drink products, you have your tablets, you even have hydrogen water machines or cooler type things you can set up and drink high concentrations of hydrogen water in this way also.
Amazing. Right. Very cool.
Yeah, well, we're going to continue to research some of those products, that's for sure. Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for your knowledge base is great on this subject. I'll tell you, man. To me, you're the authority coming on our show.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. And of course, everyone's welcome to check out our website, molecularhydrogenfoundation.org or molecularhydrogeninstitute.org. Again, we're a science-based nonprofit. We're focused on advancing research, education, awareness. Hydrogen is still in its infancy. It's not a cure-all. We don't know everything. We don't know how it all works or its real therapeutic effects, but these preliminary results and the safety profile of hydrogen really is what gets us excited to want to do more research and to advance the awareness and to really see what hydrogen can do.
Yeah, appreciate that research. Yeah, we all should go there. I've been there, and everyone should go there. It's great stuff. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pompa. Thank you so much, Tyler, for everything you're doing. Fascinating information. Everybody definitely check out his website and support the research. So take care. All right. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.